The city below barely breathed as the first light touched the canyon. Nadia Hart stood alone on the balcony, searching for answers hidden somewhere in the morning haze. She sensed danger long before it arrived, but silence had become her shield, and now, it was the only warning she had left. Inside Nadia's apartment, time had stopped. Her red coat, her signature, was left carelessly on the floor, something she never did. The hallway felt tense, as if a story had unfolded here without witnesses. Every object whispered a clue, yet nothing revealed where she had gone, or who she feared that morning. Her car sat just off the canyon road, door open as though she had stepped out mid-thought. No footprints. No struggle. Only the fog drifting past the empty driver's seat. Investigators would later call this the moment the timeline cracked, when Nadia's world vanished into silence without leaving a trace. Detective Arden sifted through the chaos of notes and photographs laid across his desk. Every location, every timestamp, every face connected to Nadia formed a web of unanswered questions. Her disappearance wasn't random, he felt it. Something in this pile held the truth. Something was hiding, waiting to be uncovered. The last confirmed sighting of Nadia felt unsettling. She moved with purpose, yet something in her posture spoke of quiet urgency. She avoided cameras, avoided people. Investigators replayed the footage endlessly, searching for a sign. But all they found was a woman who knew she was being watched, and running out of time. While the city slept, the investigation grew deeper. Every road, every alley, every shadowed corner of Los Angeles felt connected to her story. Somewhere beneath these bright veins of traffic lay the truth. Nadia's disappearance wasn't a moment, it was a journey shaped by fear, secrets, and the people she trusted least. Inside Nadia's rented storage unit, investigators found what she had worked so hard to hide. Financial documents, recordings, and a locked briefcase she never intended to leave behind. Whatever she had uncovered had terrified her. This was no ordinary case. This was the foundation of a much bigger secret unraveling. The garage where she last parked held clues in its silence. Echoes of footsteps, the metallic hum of old lights, and a camera capturing more shadows than people. Investigators noticed a figure following her earlier that week, a presence barely visible, yet undeniably real. Someone had been tracking Nadia carefully, patiently. Her reservation that night remained untouched. 2 glasses, 2 plates, no guests. Nadia had planned to meet someone whose identity never appeared on record. The untouched table became a symbol of the truth she never got to share. Whoever she waited for either betrayed her, or never intended to arrive at all. The final email she received changed everything. "You were right," it read, sent from an untraceable account minutes before she vanished. Whatever truth Nadia discovered, someone else confirmed it. Someone who knew the danger she was facing. This was the message that tied her fate to something far more sinister. Detective Arden often found clarity above the city, far from noise, far from interruption. The rooftop became his refuge, a place where he tried to understand the scattered pieces of Nadia Hart's final days. The case papers in his hands told a fragmented story, a woman running, a secret rising, and a shadow closing in. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long amber streaks through the smog, he realized something crucial. Nadia wasn't just missing. She had predicted her disappearance. She had taken steps to hide her trail, but not to escape. She was preparing for someone. Someone she had confronted before. The wind flicked through his notes, lifting a torn photograph of Nadia, her eyes calm yet deeply unsettled. Arden understood then. She knew the inevitable was coming. The question remained, who brought it to her door? Miles away from the city, investigators discovered a location that Nadia had visited 3 weeks before she vanished, a secluded cabin buried in thick forest. No neighbors, no cameras, no paths leading directly to it. Inside, the scent of wood smoke lingered, suggesting someone had been there recently. On the table lay old photographs, a cracked phone, and a notebook filled with coded entries. This wasn't a hideout. It was a meeting place. One page in the notebook stood out, a date circled twice. The day before Nadia disappeared. Whoever she met here wasn't a stranger. The atmosphere felt untouched yet heavy, as if the walls had absorbed the fears she carried. Arden sensed that this cabin held the truth of her final decision, the moment she chose to reveal what she'd uncovered, despite knowing the danger waiting on the other side. Security footage from a nearby nightclub revealed an unsettling detail. Nadia had been followed days before she went missing. The alley behind the club painted the scene in neon blues and reds, the wet ground shimmering under the flickering lights. A hooded figure stood watching her from the shadows, unmoving, patient. Not the kind of person who stumbled into the wrong place, but someone who waited with purpose. Investigators enhanced the footage frame by frame, but the figure's face remained obscured, hidden by darkness. However, his posture betrayed familiarity. He wasn't studying her like a stranger, he was monitoring her like someone who knew her well. Nadia seemed aware of the presence but never reacted openly. She walked faster, shoulders tense, clutching her phone. Whatever she had discovered had drawn attention from someone she had once trusted, and that betrayal soon became deadly. Nadia's private desk offered the most revealing glimpse into her final days. Investigators found torn envelopes marked private, financial documents linked to offshore accounts, and a burner phone with several deleted messages. Forensic recovery uncovered one final text. "If you're reading this, they already know." That single sentence changed the direction of the investigation. It implied Nadia wasn't just uncovering corruption, she was directly involved in something bigger, something dangerous. The letters hinted at legal battles, stolen assets, and a network of individuals willing to do anything to protect their secrets. The burner phone had been smashed intentionally, not out of panic but precision. Nadia knew her communication was compromised. She knew eyes were watching her every step. What investigators didn't know yet was how far she had gone, and how much she had risked, to expose the truth. Nadia's penthouse was once a symbol of elegance, but the investigators found it in ruins. The meticulous disorder suggested a targeted search, not a burglary. Drawers were emptied, but only specific ones. Files were missing, while others were left untouched. Someone had been looking for something precise, something they believed Nadia had hidden. The shattered vase near the balcony, the torn cushions, and the scattered documents revealed a desperate intruder, possibly convinced Nadia had evidence that could destroy them. Yet the most disturbing detail remained: no signs of forced entry. Whoever came into her home either had access, or she let them in. The investigators stood surrounded by the chaos, realizing that this crime wasn't random. It was calculated, intimate, and driven by fear. Nadia had been close to uncovering something monumental, and that knowledge made her a target. The trail led investigators to a long-abandoned government archive building, one Nadia had visited shortly before disappearing. The place smelled of mold and rust, with towering cabinets filled with forgotten files. She had accessed restricted documents tied to a real estate consortium involved in money laundering and political manipulation. Using her legal expertise, she had traced irregularities that no one else noticed. Her flashlight beam must have swept across these cabinets in the same way, illuminating truths long buried. But someone else had discovered her visit, someone who monitored the archives despite their official closure. Footprints in the dust indicated she hadn't been alone. She was followed here. This room, with its decaying shelves and silent walls, became the beginning of her end. The deeper the investigators searched, the clearer it became: Nadia wasn't just exposing corruption. She was threatening an empire. Deep beneath a financial skyscraper lay a vault that only a handful of elite executives could access. Yet records confirmed Nadia had entered it shortly before her disappearance. How she bypassed the system remained unknown, but what she retrieved from inside changed everything. Inside the vault, investigators later found a digital ledger documenting illegal transfers, offshore accounts, and bribery transactions linking powerful names. The vault door was left slightly ajar, suggesting someone fled in haste. Emergency lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Whoever tried to hide these records realized too late that Nadia had outsmarted them. But obtaining the evidence didn't guarantee safety, it marked her for elimination. The vault became a silent witness to her final confrontation with a secret network that had operated untouched for years, now threatened by a single determined woman. The night before she vanished, Nadia drove at high speed across an empty highway, captured by a distant security camera. Investigators traced her movements and discovered she wasn't fleeing. She was heading toward a location she believed held the final evidence she needed. Her car barely slowed as she navigated the sharp bends of the canyon road. She had been communicating with an unknown contact, someone who claimed to hold documents linked to the larger conspiracy. But another vehicle followed her at a measured distance, lights dimmed, staying just far enough to avoid detection. The footage showed the shadow vehicle mimicking her every turn. This wasn't coincidence. It was pursuit. Nadia never reached her intended destination. Somewhere between the last camera and the bend leading into the mountains, her car disappeared from sight, and her fate followed soon after. The cliffside overlook became the first major crime scene. Nadia's shoe, found near the edge, raised chilling possibilities. The wind howled through the grass, echoing the struggle investigators suspected had taken place. Yet the ground revealed no signs of a fall, only dragged marks leading back toward the road. She hadn't jumped, nor been pushed over. She had been taken. The shoe was not evidence of death, but a silent plea. A message from Nadia herself, knowing investigators would search every trace. Rain had washed away most physical evidence, but the disturbed soil told a quiet story. She fought back. She resisted whoever confronted her here. And the cliffside, overlooking miles of silent canyon, became the transition point between where she was last seen and where she was taken next. The motel room, registered under an alias, proved Nadia had been preparing for more than an investigation. She had been planning her own protection. Maps of the city were marked with routes, safe houses, and possible escape paths. Fake IDs lay beside stacks of cash, prepared for a moment she feared was coming. Yet the half-written letter on the table held the greatest weight. Addressed to someone unnamed, it read, "If I don't return, tell them everything. They must know." Her handwriting trembled slightly, revealing fears she tried to suppress. Nadia had uncovered something powerful, something dangerous enough to erase her existence entirely. The motel room showed her plan to survive, but also her realization that survival was no longer guaranteed. The storage unit was rented under a false name, but every trace inside led back to Nadia. Investigators discovered that she had used this hidden space as a private archive, far from prying eyes. Boxes were filled with photocopied documents, photographs dated months apart, and notes connecting influential figures to offshore fraud. But the metal briefcase, left open on the floor, held something far more important, a USB drive labeled simply "Root." Its encrypted contents revealed the foundation of a criminal network that operated beneath legitimate businesses, linking executives, politicians, and even law enforcement. This storage unit was her command center, the silent place where she pieced together the truth. But its discovery also confirmed one thing: someone else had been here before the investigators arrived. Dust patterns showed recent disturbance. Nadia's secrets were no longer hidden, they were being hunted. The industrial port became the next unexpected clue. Surveillance logs revealed that Nadia had visited this location twice, each time after receiving encrypted messages. Investigators discovered that one particular cargo container, placed away from the main lanes, contained ledgers tying the real estate consortium to illegal imports and under-the-table transactions. The silence of the port at night contrasted sharply with the magnitude of the crimes buried there. The stillness of the cranes, the cold metal of the containers, and the emptiness of the docks created an eerie atmosphere, as if the port itself had decades of secrets hidden beneath its concrete. Nadia had taken significant risks by coming here. She knew the information stored in this location could destroy an empire. And for the first time, investigators realized they were not dealing with a simple disappearance. They were unraveling a criminal organization prepared to eliminate threats without hesitation. Throughout the investigation, witnesses reported seeing a mysterious individual around locations connected to Nadia. This silhouette behind frosted glass became symbolic of the threat she faced, someone always present, but never fully seen. A ghost moving through her life with purpose. Phone records and CCTV timelines suggested this figure followed her for nearly a month prior to her disappearance. Every appearance aligned with moments when she discovered critical information. The investigators believed this was the primary enforcer of the network, assigned to monitor and neutralize her if necessary. The blurred outline, the careful distance, the silent tracking, everything pointed to a calculated surveillance operation. Nadia had sensed this presence, yet continued her pursuit of truth. She underestimated one thing: the network had already shifted from observing her to preparing for her removal. The forensics lab became the turning point in the case. A damaged hard drive recovered from Nadia's apartment was reconstructed piece by piece, revealing digital records she had attempted to secure before her disappearance. Combined with the torn diary page found in her storage unit, the evidence formed a timeline that exposed her growing desperation. The diary described her fears of being watched, the pressure of powerful enemies, and a cryptic warning. "They're closer than I thought." Fingerprints found on the diary page belonged to someone in her social circle, a person with no reason to be involved. As investigators examined each piece under the cold blue forensic light, a chilling realization emerged. The truth wasn't buried in the shadows of criminal enterprises. It lived much closer to Nadia than anyone expected. Someone within her trusted circle played a role in her downfall. The film's studio office belonged to an industry figure Nadia once trusted, a mentor who guided her early career. But the shattered glass table told a different story. Security logs revealed Nadia had confronted this person days before she vanished. Tension escalated into a heated argument, though cameras captured only muffled silhouettes through frosted windows. Investigators later found financial links between this studio head and the consortium Nadia had uncovered. The awards and accolades on the shelves masked years of concealed corruption. Nadia had unknowingly challenged a key operative within the network. The confrontation was never about artistic disputes, it was about exposure. Her mentor had more to lose than reputation. He risked imprisonment, asset seizure, and the unraveling of powerful connections. The office became the place where truth collided with threat, pushing Nadia deeper into danger she could no longer navigate safely. This hotel room was where investigators believed Nadia spent her final moments before being taken. The cracked mirror on the bathroom floor suggested a struggle, perhaps a sudden confrontation or a moment of panic. Water overflowing from the sink indicated she had left abruptly, leaving behind a room filled with traces of urgency. Her fingerprints, mixed with another unidentified set, revealed she wasn't alone. There was no forced entry, which meant she had opened the door willingly. Whoever visited her that night wasn't a stranger. The fogged mirror and the scattered toiletries reflected a woman preparing for escape, yet interrupted by someone she didn't expect. This room captured the silent climax of her fear, her realization that time had run out, and her enemies had finally stepped out from the shadows. Investigators believed this bathroom marked the beginning of her forced disappearance. The abandoned car in the parking garage was Nadia's final verifiable trace before her disappearance. Parked awkwardly between pillars, the driver's door left wide open, it stood as a silent testament to an interrupted escape. Tire marks suggested another car had blocked her in. Inside, her personal belongings were scattered: wallet, keys, and a torn piece of her scarf. Yet the engine was still warm when security found it hours later. The flickering tube light above cast eerie shadows on the concrete floor, amplifying the unnerving stillness of the scene. This wasn't an accident or a panic stop, it was a forced extraction. Nadia had been taken swiftly, efficiently, and without witnesses. The parking garage swallowed her presence, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a chilling sense of how close she had come to breaking the case wide open. 2 days after her disappearance, investigators discovered a fragment of fabric along a quiet shoreline, later confirmed to belong to Nadia. The ocean breeze carried a calmness that contrasted sharply with the grim reality of what the clue implied. Drag patterns in the sand suggested someone had been here during the night, possibly disposing of evidence, or attempting to mislead the investigation. The shoreline's isolation made it a perfect location for erasing traces. Yet the torn fabric persisted, caught in seaweed as if refusing to disappear. It became the first physical confirmation that Nadia's disappearance was planned meticulously, with steps taken to distance her from every location tied to the conspiracy. The waves washed over the sand rhythmically, as if echoing a truth the perpetrators hoped would drown beneath the tides. But the evidence resurfaced, piece by piece. When investigators finally identified a possible collaborator in Nadia's inner circle, the interview room became the stage for unraveling the truth. The suspects sat under dim lights, their reflection barely visible in the one-way mirror. The silence inside the room grew heavier with every minute. Their statements were inconsistent, hesitant, evasive, and laced with contradictions. Polygraph results suggested concealed information, though not direct involvement. What became clear, however, was that Nadia had confided in the wrong person. She had revealed parts of her investigation to someone who later passed the information to the network. This betrayal set the final events in motion. The interview room didn't expose a killer, but it revealed a chain of trust that collapsed around her. A misplaced confidence became the catalyst that allowed the conspiracy to tighten its grip, sealing her fate. This underground tunnel, connected to an old drainage system, was discovered accidentally during a city infrastructure audit. Inside, investigators found a bracelet belonging to Nadia, a meaningful item she never removed. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows against the damp walls. Footprints indicated that several individuals had passed through recently, likely using the tunnel as an unmonitored route. For investigators, this discovery was monumental. The tunnel provided the first evidence of Nadia being moved through hidden pathways, away from surveillance and public detection. It suggested a coordinated extraction involving multiple people and strategic planning. The bracelet, lying cold on the concrete, became a silent cry for help. It proved that she had been alive when taken, and that her captors had chosen secrecy over violence, at least initially. The tunnel marked the dark transition from disappearance to captivity. The basement room was uncovered beneath an abandoned textile warehouse long forgotten by the city. Chains hung from the ceiling like lifeless reminders of struggles never seen, while a single chair sat beneath a harsh spotlight, as if waiting for its next prisoner. Investigators found claw marks on the wooden arms, suggesting someone had fought desperately to free themselves. Among the dust and debris, small fibers matching Nadia's clothing were recovered, a devastating confirmation that she had been held captive here. The realization hit hard: her disappearance wasn't instantaneous. She had endured fear, interrogation, and isolation. This room wasn't a random location. It was a controlled environment used by the network for extracting information. Nadia, aware of what she had uncovered, likely refused to speak. Her silence, even under pressure, became the final act of resistance in her fight for the truth. A passerby reported something unusual beneath the sprawling roots of a banyan tree, a metal box pushed halfway out of the soil, as if someone had buried it in haste. Inside were photographs of key members of the consortium, candid shots taken without their knowledge, alongside coded notes, written in Nadia's handwriting. This box was her contingency plan, evidence she hid in case she didn't survive. She anticipated her own disappearance long before it happened. The banyan tree's overwhelming presence created a haunting contrast, a symbol of life sheltering a record of corruption. Investigators realized Nadia had prepared for every scenario except one: the betrayal that led to her capture. Each photograph revealed another piece of the puzzle, exposing faces that never expected to be linked to a crime. The box proved Nadia had discovered the truth earlier than anyone realized. The shipping container was discovered after a scrapyard worker noticed an unusual odor and reported it to authorities. The door was slightly ajar, as if someone left in a rush. A torn strip of cloth stuck between the hinges matched the material of Nadia's earlier recovered clothing. Inside, investigators found signs of recent occupancy, scratches on the metal walls, a broken chain, and traces of blood too small to determine fatal injury. The container functioned as a temporary holding unit, away from public detection and far from security cameras. This location provided the clearest indication of Nadia's movement after her abduction. The network had taken her from place to place, leaving minimal evidence but enough for investigators to piece together a pattern. This container marked the moment her captors grew careless, allowing the first real breakthrough in her trajectory after disappearance. The old railway tunnel stretched endlessly into darkness, the distant light barely touching the decaying concrete walls. When investigators found a notebook near the tracks, covered in dust but intact, they realized it belonged to Nadia. The entries inside were fragmented, written during captivity or high distress. She documented names, dates, and coded messages pointing toward political involvement in the network's operations. Her words became an unfiltered confession of fear and determination, revealing how she attempted to send clues even while being moved between hidden locations. The tunnel represented a place of fleeting opportunity, perhaps where she tried to escape, or where captors temporarily shifted her containment. The graffiti on the walls contrasted her handwriting inside the notebook, mirroring the clash between chaos and controlled truth. This discovery proved Nadia fought to leave a trail, even in her darkest moments. The surveillance room belonged to a security contractor connected to the consortium. Rows of outdated monitors lined the wall, each showing fragmented and glitchy footage. One screen remained frozen on a single frame, Nadia walking into a building days before her disappearance. This was the last uncorrupted footage capturing her movement. The timestamp revealed the exact hour the network began tracking her, confirming premeditated planning. Hard drives found in the room held fragments of deleted footage, outlining a timeline of surveillance that dated back weeks. They monitored her calls, her visits, her meetings. Everything she did was analyzed and anticipated. Nadia believed she worked in secrecy, but the network always stayed one step ahead. This room became proof of systematic observation, showing investigators that her disappearance was not spontaneous. It was the final step in a long orchestrated trap. The lake appeared serene, calm waters, whispering fog, and a wooden dock stretching into the stillness. But this location was far from peaceful. A small boat tied loosely to the edge revealed recent use, and footprints on the damp planks indicated multiple individuals moved across it recently. Investigators traced the boat to an unregistered owner known for assisting in illegal transport. The lake likely served as a transition point between safe houses, a way to move Nadia without leaving a digital trail. Fog allowed perfect concealment from aerial surveillance, turning the water into a cloak for criminal operations. A rope fiber found inside the boat matched fibers from the warehouse basement, connecting both locations. This lake symbolized the quiet efficiency of the network, remote, coordinated, and ruthlessly organized. Nadia's journey through these hidden routes painted the map of a conspiracy larger than anyone imagined. Behind the abandoned farmhouse, investigators found a fire pit still releasing thin streams of smoke. The documents inside had been burned recently, minutes before authorities arrived. Among the charred remains were traces of legal contracts, offshore account lists, and personal correspondences belonging to high-ranking individuals. Someone was erasing the trail, desperately destroying the very evidence Nadia had collected. But not everything turned to ash. Edges of several pages remained legible, revealing names previously unknown to investigators. These fragments exposed internal betrayal within the network, suggesting power struggles and fear of collapse. The fire pit symbolized a frantic attempt to rewrite history before exposure became unavoidable. Whoever lit the fire knew investigators were closing in. This location revealed that the network was cracking, and the individuals Nadia had challenged were no longer in control. They were acting out of fear. The medical facility wasn't on any public directory. It operated beneath a foundation believed to be a charity, but investigators uncovered it as a covert site for treating injuries without records. The clipboard on the floor held a patient intake sheet under an alias matching Nadia's physical descriptions. She had been brought here alive, injured, restrained, and treated by personnel unaware of her identity. Surveillance cameras inside the facility showed masked individuals transporting someone through the restricted corridor. The sealed door became the boundary between documented medical practice and illegal confinement. For investigators, this discovery confirmed two things: Nadia survived her initial abduction, and the network spared her only long enough to extract what she knew. But her silence, even in pain, forced them to shift strategies. This facility marked the moment where her captors realized she would never reveal the truth willingly. Tips from an anonymous whistleblower led investigators to a remote field on the outskirts of the city. Heavy floodlights cut through the darkness as forensic teams carefully dug into the hardened soil. Hours later, they uncovered a metal container sealed tightly with industrial locks. Inside were items belonging to Nadia: her bracelet, a journal, a USB drive, and a small voice recorder. These objects provided the final sequence of events, revealing how she was moved, interrogated, and ultimately silenced. The journal entries showed fading handwriting, detailing her deteriorating condition and final attempts to warn anyone who might find her notes. The recorder held partial audio clips: breathing, footsteps, distant machinery. Nothing incriminating, but enough to confirm captivity. This container became the silent capsule of her final days, buried intentionally by someone who hoped the truth would never emerge. The courtroom remained empty, yet its silence carried the weight of everything uncovered. Here, the fragmented evidence pieced together by investigators finally confronted the legal system. One by one, names tied to the network were brought under scrutiny: politicians, executives, and former allies Nadia once trusted. Her disappearance became the catalyst that exposed years of corruption hidden behind wealth and influence. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating the dust suspended in the air, as if time itself paused to acknowledge the truth finally surfacing. Though Nadia never returned, her pursuit of justice echoed in every file placed on the judge's desk. The courtroom symbolized a shift from fear to accountability. Her courage forced an entire system to face its darkest corners. Justice moved slowly, but it moved because she never stopped fighting, even when the world had no idea she was fighting at all. In the final stretch of the investigation, this hallway became the most critical piece of the puzzle. It was here that the timeline aligned with reality, breaking through weeks of confusion and unanswered questions. Investigators studied every flicker of the CCTV, every shadow that moved across the polished tiles, searching for the moment everything changed. And buried inside the footage, they found it: a subtle shift in her posture, a hesitation, a heartbeat of fear. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. This hallway, empty and quiet, held the last unspoken truth of a life weighed down by emotional storms. The evidence board told a story no one wanted to admit. What looked like random fragments slowly transformed into a map of emotional pressure, financial entanglements, and psychological decline. Every arrow connected to a deeper truth, a truth she had tried to carry alone. Investigators spent nights reorganizing the board, shifting pieces until the entire picture formed a painful but clear narrative. This wasn't just a mystery, it was a chain of events born from trust misplaced in the wrong hands. In the glow of the forensic lights, the motive finally surfaced, revealing how love had silently turned into control. The diary was one of the most heartbreaking discoveries. Not because of what it revealed, but because of what it tried to hide. The rushed handwriting spoke of confusion, the crossed out lines hinted at fear, and the final pages carried a loneliness few would ever understand. Investigators read through each entry carefully, tracing the emotional collapse that had been happening behind the glamour. It became clear that her struggles weren't sudden, they had been building silently for months. This diary, fragile and deeply personal, became her final voice, a voice that exposed the weight she carried long before the tragedy unfolded. When the case reached its final hearings, the courtroom felt less like a legal space and more like a stage holding the last act of a painful story. Witnesses took their turns, evidence was revisited, and emotions filled the air like an invisible tension. The judge listened with a stillness that carried respect for the life that had been lost. And in that silence, the truth became undeniable. This wasn't about blaming fate or circumstance. It was about acknowledging the emotional torment she endured. By the time the judge prepared his final remarks, the room held its breath, waiting for justice. The media wrapped itself around the case like wildfire, fueling debates, fears, and unanswered questions. Every detail became a headline, every whisper became breaking news. Yet behind the noise, one truth remained clear: The world was witnessing the collapse of a young life shaped by pressure and manipulation. While reporters fought for angles, investigators quietly continued their work, separating fact from rumor. And somewhere in this storm of speculation, the meaning of her struggle emerged, a devastating reminder that even the brightest stars can fade when trapped in the shadows of emotional chaos. To investigators, this bracelet was just evidence. But to those who knew her, it was a symbol of the fragility she tried so hard to hide. Each bead represented a moment of vulnerability, a small fracture in the facade she presented to the world. It reminded everyone that emotional wounds don't always leave visible scars. Sometimes they show themselves in small, silent ways, in things left behind, in objects that carry stories of their own. As the bracelet lay scattered across the floor, it reflected a truth the world often forgets: even the strongest people break quietly. The shoreline became a place of reflection for many who followed the case. The waves, relentless yet soothing, felt like a metaphor for her struggle, constant, overwhelming, and silently consuming. Here, away from the noise of the city, the weight of her story settled in. People came to remember her, to honor the dreams she never got to fulfill. And in the quiet roar of the sea, her journey felt larger than the tragedy that took her life. It became a reminder that emotional pain can run deeper than the ocean itself, hidden beneath calm surfaces. For her mother, justice was never about punishment, it was about truth. The kind of truth that validates a life lived with struggle and silent suffering. She stood through hearings, faced crowds, and carried the weight of memories too painful to relive. But her strength became the backbone of the entire case, pushing investigators to look deeper, to see what others ignored. Her grief wasn't loud, it was steady, unwavering. And in her quiet resilience, the world saw the real impact of emotional abuse, a wound that doesn't heal easily, but refuses to be forgotten. The candle symbolized everything she represented: warmth, innocence, and a light that struggled against the winds of pressure. As it flickered softly, it felt like a tribute to the resilience she showed until her final moments. The flowers surrounding the portrait reminded everyone of the purity she carried, a purity overshadowed by the emotional chaos of her last months. This small memorial became a place for people to reflect on her life, not just her death. It reminded them that behind tragedies are real humans, real dreams, and real battles fought silently. In the end, her story became more than a case. It became a reflection of everything we often overlook. The silent suffering behind fame, the emotional battles hidden behind smiles, and the desperate cries for help that go unheard. As the sun rose over the city, it brought a sense of closure. Not because justice erases pain, but because truth brings understanding. Her journey reminds us that no love should dim one's spirit, no ambition should suffocate one's peace, and no dream should cost a life. She may be gone, but her truth remains, a quiet warning, forever echoing through the hearts of those willing to listen.